Hey guys, another chapter 3 video here, and we're still working on two-step equations because we want to get really good at them. So today's essential question is, how can I solve two-step equations with fractions in them? And of course, fractions always make things more complicated, but the process that we've been learning is still going to be the same, and so that's kind of what's cool about this. So we're going to start our notes here by doing an example. And for this first example, what we're going to do is we are going to solve for x. So solve for x. And the problem we're going to solve is we are going to solve 1/2 x minus 3 equals 7. 1/2 x minus 3 equals 7. Okay, so I see a fraction in this problem, and I have a couple of different choices. But I do know, no matter what I do, that if I put a line down the equal sign, I'm trying to get x all by itself. That's the goal. Isolate the variable. So one of the things I could do is just add that 3 over. Add this 3 to get rid of it, and add this 3, flip it over, and do 7 plus 3 to get 10. That'd be a good first step, I think. And then I have 1/2 x equals 10. Well, how do I get rid of a fraction? Well, fractions mean to divide. So if this is a division problem, the opposite of dividing is to multiply. So I'm going to be multiplying by 2 on both sides. That's what's going to get rid of this fraction, so that all I'm left with is a 1x, so I have 1x, and 10 times 2 equals 20. And I basically have my answer because 1x is really just an x, so x is equal to 20. There's my solution. So the steps are really no different. We're still isolating variables. It's just managing those fractions. Now this is what I would say is kind of an easier fractional problem. Let's try a harder one. Let's make it a little more complicated. So we're going to do another example, and this time, here's what we're going to deal with. Example. This time we're going to deal with 2 plus 3/5 x equals -5. 2 plus 3/5 x equals -5. Same story, line down the equal sign, isolate the variable, get x all by itself. I would flip this 2 over to the other side, make it a -2. That would definitely be one of my first steps. And then I have -5 and -2 make -7. But then I still have 3/5 x equals -7. Okay, so now what do I do? Well, now I gotta say 3/5 means I'm dividing by 5. Fractions mean divide. So the opposite would be to multiply by 5 on both sides. And that's exactly what I'm going to do to get rid of the 5's. That's going to be a good strategy. But it doesn't get rid of the 3. I still have a 3x. So I still have 3x equals, but now I have -7 times 5. So that would be, they don't match, so that's a negative. 7 times 5 is 35. Okay, so now what do I do? Well, continue the things that I know how to do. To get rid of the 3, I have to divide it away. So I'm going to divide by 3 on both sides. X is going to equal -35 divided by 3, and that's going to be a decimal. 3 does not go into 35 evenly. I know that for a fact. Let's see what it is. We'll clear out what's in here. So we're going to do -35 divided by 3. How bad is this decimal, you think? Well, not too bad. -11.666 repeated. So I'm going to write underneath x equals -11.6 repeated, and that's going to be my solution. And there we go. There's our steps. So why don't you try one before we move on to the really complicated ones. I'm going to give you a you try. I'm going to get rid of that. And let's see if you can do this. Let's practice. So here is your you try problem. This is for you to do on your own to see if you've got a handle on this. And for your you try problem, you're going to solve for w. Solve for w. So go ahead and write that down. And here's your problem. You have 2/5 w minus 1 equals -3. Okay, so right now I want you to pause your device. Solve this on your own, and we're going to see if you get it correct. So go ahead and give it a try. Okay, you ready? Did you pause and unpause, and do you have a solution? Because you want to practice. You want to make sure you can do this. So you should have a line down the equal sign every time. I probably would take that -1 and flip it to a +1. I think that's a good strategy. Negative 3 plus 1, different signs subtract, 3 take away 1 would be a negative 2. But we still have on this side 2/5 W equals negative 2. So we got to get rid of the 2/5, and we're going to get rid of the divide by 5 first. We're going to times the 5 on both sides to get rid of it. That'll be my first step. It's still going to leave the 2W, but now on the other side, negative 2 times 5, that's not a match, that's negative. 2 times 5 is 10. Yay, we're getting close. So all I got to do is divide by 2, get rid of these. W is going to equal negative divided by a positive doesn't match, so that's a negative. 10 divided by 2 is 5. There is our answer. Now, hopefully you got the right answer. If not, I want you to check and see where was your mistake. But then my other advice to you is check your work. Some of you are having a hard time showing these multi-steps. You should be basically having different levels of work. So the very first step was add 1. That should be all by itself. The next step was to multiply by 5. That should be all by itself. And then we divided by 2. That should be a line all by itself. You really should have the problem. And then what do we got here? 1, 2, 3, 4 layers. That's what your work should look like too. You should have these 4 layers because in algebra in high school, this is how we're going to organize our work. And we want to be, when we get into those like 10-step problems, you really need to be able to do this. So practice and make sure your work looks nice and neat. Now, I told you I was going to show you some more complicated fractions, so let me show you some. We're going to do another example here. Here's one that I think is pretty complicated, and we're going to see what you guys think about it too. So here it is. It is 2 minus x over 3 equals negative 5 halves. Two fractions. We're dealing with multiple fractions here, so this is messy. So I'm going to put my line down the equal sign. And then I'm thinking to myself, I really want to get rid of these fractions. I truly do. Like, I don't like that the x is being divided by 3. So I know division, the opposite is to multiply. And I know if I times by 3, it gets rid of this. But I can't just times one thing by 3. If I decide this is my strategy, I have to multiply this entire equation by 3. I have to do 3 times the 2, 3 times the fraction. I even have to do times 3 over here. Everywhere times 3. That's going to give me 3 times 2, which is 6. That's going to get rid of my fraction. So instead, I'm just going to have a minus x. So that's nice. And then over here, negative 5 times 3 is not a match. It's going to be negative. 5 times 3 is 15. So we have 15, and it's still over 2. But at least this is looking a little bit better. So what's my next move? Well, I think the next move is to flip the 6. Take the 6 over to the other side, make it a negative. What's that going to leave? Well, that's going to leave a minus x equals, and then over here, this is pretty complicated. We have a negative 15 halves, and we have a minus 6. Okay, so now we got to know our fraction work. Fractions cannot be subtracted unless they have common denominators. So we need to change this 6 so that it has a denominator over 2 to match this one. So I'm going to make it negative 15 halves minus, let's see, well, if I change 6 to a fraction, 6 times 2, that'd be 12 halves. 12 divided by 2 is back to 6. So this is actually what I'm dealing with. And it's a subtraction problem, so it's KCC. It's keep, change, change. Same signs, add and keep. Negative 15 plus negative 12 adds up to a negative, what would that be? That'd be a negative 27. So negative 27 halves equals what's on the other side. Remember, we still got this line down the middle. We still have a negative x. Oh, wow, this is an ugly answer, and we're not even done yet. I don't want a negative x. I'm going to flip the negative x over and make it a positive x. I don't want to leave everything on the right, so I'll do a flip here, and I'll make this a positive 27 divided by 2. We just found our answer. X is equal to 27 halves. 27 divided by 2. And if you want, you could divide 27 by 2. You probably don't need a calculator for this, but I'm going to put it in just to show you that if you take 27 and divide it in half, it's 13.5. So our answer is 13.5 equals x. And this is a good answer, But if you actually wanted to stop one step earlier and say 27 halves, you could have done that too. These are both considered correct. Like I said, these get really complicated. Look, if I go through my work, look at all the steps that I'm showing. Well, it's quite a bit of steps. And really the key thing here was at the very beginning, I decided to multiply everything by 3 to get rid of that fraction from the x. So let's try another one of these because they take practice. And you're going to see some in your homework soon. So really good idea to practice these. So next example, here we go. We'll try another one. This time, let's try this. Negative 9/4 x plus 4/5 equals 7/8. Yuck, look at triple fractions. Oh my gosh. Okay, how much fun will this be? Let's deal with it. Line down the equal sign. Let's get rid of fractions first. So which fraction do I most want to get rid of? This one, negative 9/4 x. I don't want it. So my plan is to times this by 4 to get rid of that fraction. But that means I got to times this by 4. I got to times this by 4. I got to do everything. So the fraction will go away and I'll just have this negative 9x. So that's good. That's something happy. 4 times 4 is going to give me a 16/5. And 7 times 4 is going to give me a 28/8. Nice. Okay, so now what? Well, I'm trying to get x by itself. So this 16/5 better move over to a negative 16/5. I think that would be a smart move. So what am I going to have? Well, this will be gone. I'll still have a negative 9x. Over here, I'm going to have 28/8 minus 16/5. That's pretty. Okay, well, they don't have common denominators, so we're going to need the common denominator. I'm going to butterfly it real quickly because I think that'll be an easy strategy. 8 times 5 is 40, so I'm going to use a common denominator of 40 on each of these. And then I'm going to do 5 times 28, and I'm going to do 8 times 16. So let's do this. 5 times 28. 5 times 28 is 140, so 140. Minus 8 times 16. 8 times 16. These are going to be some big numbers. 128. Oh, wow. Okay. Here we go. So we have negative 9x equals 140 minus 128. All right. Man, we are working through this. 140 minus 128. Aren't you excited to do these on your own in your homework? Oh, it's 12. Okay, so what do we get? We get, this combines to 12/40 equals negative 9x. We aren't done though. What do we got to get rid of from the x? The negative 9. Watch this. We are going to divide the negative 9 away. And when we do that, we have to do that to both sides, remember? So we have to divide the negative 9 on this side also. Look at this triple fraction stuff. Ooh, this is getting really fun. So what we have is 12/40 divided by negative 9. I don't know if you remember how this works, but like in 6th grade math, when you're dividing by a fraction, you flip and multiply. Do you remember that? So if it's 12/40, I'm going to write it instead like divided by a negative 9. You would flip this over and say, well, that's really like 12/40 times 1 over negative 9. Do you remember that? So we got to do 40 times 9. Okay, 40 times 9. Well, I know 4 times 9 is 36. So it's going to be x equals 12 over 36 with an extra 0. And it's negative. There it is. Negative 12 and 360. Wow. Okay, so this is kind of a good answer, except I'm pretty sure I can simplify 360 and 12. Obviously divide by 2, probably by 6. Let's see if 360 can divide by 12 itself. Does 12 fit evenly in? It does, 30 times. So we are going to divide this down by 12 to simplify the fraction. And we're going to get a negative. 12 divided by 12 is 1. 360 divided by 12, we just did that in our calculator. We got 30. So final answer. X is equal to negative 1/30. Wow. So they call these two-step problems, but I don't really know why you would call it a two-step problem. It's much more than a two-step problem because you have to know all of your fractional work. So key thing is when I start the problem, I multiply to get rid of the fraction that's with the x, and then I start cleaning it up, Use common denominators anytime you're adding or subtracting fractions. And we'll do some of these in class too, but they take practice. Like I said, look at all the space it takes just to do these. Super fun, huh? Okay, well, I'll see you guys in class. Thanks for watching the video. If I went too fast, go back and watch it again because it takes practice to get these down. So watch it a second time. It always is a good idea. See you guys. Have a good day. Bye.